Tonight, free train travel from Monday to avoid another strike, a bonus for Sydney commuters, but the hidden cost is huge.
The Premier confronted by angry flood victims.
Is that fair? And no one's here to help.
The heartbreaking clean-up as more towns prepare to be swamped.
A terrifying moment. Police ended what they allege is a violent week-long bender.
Conviction quashed. The man who pleaded guilty to killing a man on the northern beaches but could face new justice.
Our spectacular harbour used to spread a serious message against domestic violence.
And rock-solid support. A Hollywood giant backs Samoa to beat Australia in Sunday's World Cup final.
Live from Sydney, 7 News with Michael Usher and Angela Cox.
Good evening. Frustrated commuters have been promised a week of free travel on Sydney's trains starting Monday, halting the threat of strikes and delays across the network.
Scrapping fares might be a short-term fix to diffuse tension between the government and the union, but the long-running feud is costing taxpayers a fortune.
It's tapping, but at no cost. 5 days of free travel on Sydney trains.
Amazing.
The government's latest bid to end the rail dispute.
It's not going to solve it, but keeps us happy. Be better if you just paid the railworks what they're demanding.
Late this morning, rail unions were still threatening industrial action next Monday and Friday, reducing Sydney trains by 70%.
I'm here saying that Monday and Friday will be a weekend timetable at this point, yes.
Unless the government agreed to make rail travel free. An hour later, the Premier did.
We'll offer fare-free travel on Sydney trains for the entire week next week.
Free travel on Sydney trains, New South Wales Trainlink and Sydney Metro networks from Monday morning till midnight Friday. It meant this stoppage was shelved.
The last people we want to hurt is the commuters.
It's an industrial battle fought at the gates. The latest tactic, fare-free days, but without any peace deal in sight in this dispute, its costs are mounting.
5 days free, costing $1.5 million a day, $7.5 million for the week, added to the $30 million a month bill mothballing the intercity rail fleet, at the centre of the argument.
The New South Wales Premier seems largely disinterested in solving this issue. He's almost a bit player.
Today, taking centre stage.
I'm hoping that there's a resolution, and I want there to be a resolution within a week, and let's get it done.
Sydney trains and unions are back at the Fair Work Commission next Tuesday. Chris Marr, 7 News.
The Premier has been met with an angry reception as he flew into the flood zone and the devastated town of Eugowra. Residents say they were let down by a lack of help as they fought to save their homes and each other.
Touching down at Disaster Central in Eugowra, the Premier walking straight into a roasting.
Mr. Perrottet, could I have a word with you?
Pensioner Peter Jones, unfiltered and unforgiving.
Got a number of complaints. One is 000. I was the first one to ring up and ask for bloody helicopters, and I was practically told it's not a major flood.
Berating the Premier for 10 minutes, furious at the lack of warnings and emergency response.
And what did they do? Sit around and done sweet stuff all.
Heartbreak is clearly turning to frustration 5 days since a wall of water wiped out this small town.
What I've seen here is a total disgrace. Go and talk to them up there. Yeah. Don't hop in the helicopter like the other day.
Born and bred here, Peter is a former cop and can't stand to see his community like this. At his brother's house, it's a mangled mess.
He's 80 years old, suffering from cancer, and he walked out of here in somebody else's clothes.
A town with no power, no water, no reception, no roof over their heads, and slowly losing hope.
Will he come back to this?
He will never come back.
I don't want people to leave the towns they love.
The New South Wales government says it's fully committed to rebuilding Eugowra, offering at-home caravans to residents who can no longer live in their own homes as this rebuild continues. But with so much suffering on these streets, many people say they're struggling to find a reason to stay.
John Crow doesn't have insurance, he's lost 6 cars and so much more.
We won't be staying.
You won't stay?
No, the house will have to be knocked down. It's finished.
The stories of destruction are endless.
I have never been scared for my life before, but I was. Yeah, I just wanted to get the wife, the dogs out.
Brian Smith counts himself one of the lucky ones. This was him on Monday morning, clinging on to his 8-year-old dog Buddy, trying to stay above water.
If we stepped off into the water, it would have just washed us away straight away. The current was so strong.
An incredible tale of survival, but just one of hundreds.
So we've just been coming down the river. We've located this little fella.
While searching for 2 missing men, police divers discovering this dog 5 metres up a tree in a creek.
If you're just having a crack, get him out.
Tonight, the search is on to find her owner. Annie Puller, 7 News.
Meanwhile, new evacuation orders are in place for other towns in the Central West. Let's go live to our reporter Bill Hogan in Forbes. Bill, good evening. The misery, it sadly just continues to move west.
Yeah, it certainly is, Michael. Here in Forbes, it's been a very busy day as this water starts to go down. It's allowing for some businesses and residents to begin salvaging what they can and cleaning up. But as you said tonight, in Bujerabon and Condobolin further west, they are under threat tonight as this water continues to move downstream. There are evacuation orders in place, and there is the real threat of those towns being cut off. Roads are essentially covered in water, so there is no access. It's virtually impossible to get to those people until all this floodwater recedes, which could be as early as next week.
Forbes flooded. Aerial photos showing how the heart of town has been swamped. Rich farmland looks like it's been struck by lightning drought. That was Tuesday. This is today. An SES chopper following the burst Lachlan River. Islands of cattle huddled and waiting. Sheep lying and bogged. Farm homes left a last refuge for livestock. After being divided by 3 for days, tonight Forbes is a town split in 2. Trucks now the only access to the east side, ferrying nurses and patients to hospital the priority.
Ones that have just gone are dialysis patients because the hospital's kept the dialysis unit going.
For businesses, it's cleaning up. The Forbes Inn has never flooded like this.
Right through the pub, Dale, everything is soaking.
Water still surrounds the pub and the town. The Mazda dealership is deep in it.
It's just another clean-up, but we're used to it these days, and, you know, what do you do?
Up the road at Steve Haynes' home, his kitchen was just retiled. Now he's preparing to rip it up again.
Oh, it is what it is, mate. You know, like there's a lot more people worse off than us.
Work hasn't stopped at Bernardi's markets, powered by generators to pack crucial supplies for people still stranded.
We pick and pack, and the SES have been fantastic in coming picking up. So that system's been working really well.
Power is a major problem here. Most of the town is still cut off. Urgent work is being done to try and get as many people back online as possible, but all this water needs to recede, and that still may take days.
In Forbes, Bill Hogan, 7 News.
The victim of a bloody attack in Sydney's inner west has described the moment she thought her friend had been killed when she was hit with a samurai sword. Disgraced real estate agent Carl Howard is on trial over 2 assaults, saying he was on a drug binge and hadn't slept in a week.
Pinned to the ground.
Stop.
This was the confronting end to one man's drug-fuelled night of violence.
Stop kicking!
Carl Howard was once a high-flying real estate agent.
Welcome to our latest listing.
But high on drugs last February, he's accused of beating his then-girlfriend and pulling a 1.5-metre samurai sword on her friend. He raised the sword above his head and brought it down forcefully, striking her at least 3 times. The women escaped his Annandale home and Howard fled too, recorded climbing into the back of a ute and hiding under a cargo net as police patrolled past, laying there for almost 10 minutes before finally jumping up and collapsing onto the road.
In UTR Yambos, this guy's having some sort of psychotic episode.
Allegedly brought on by 2 weeks of drug abuse, during which he admitted to spending $24,000 on cocaine, using up to 6 grams a day. His victims telling police he began talking very fast and at one stage said, "I have to kill her." He was skipping around the room and laughing.
With me today is Mr. Carl Howard.
In his police interview in hospital, the 46-year-old appeared exhausted and upset. Analysis of Howard's blood and urine returned hits for 11 different drugs in his system, including cocaine, ketamine, fentanyl, Valium and alcohol. Psychiatrists later describing his state as one of toxic delirium. What do you have to say to the victims in this matter? He's pleaded guilty to the assaults but not guilty to more serious charges of intent to murder.
There'll be statements in the future, but nothing said before the end of the trial.
Andrew Denny, 7 News.
The French president has launched a scathing attack on Scott Morrison, accusing him of provoking nuclear tension with China.
That's after the former Prime Minister sank a $90 billion submarine deal. But Anthony Albanese is backing his predecessor's decision.
Taking centre stage on the world stage.
Australia's back. We're back around the table.
And he says using that seat to make a difference.
We punch above our weight in international forum.
Glanced by another rabbit punch from Emmanuel Macron aimed at Scott Morrison for choosing nuclear-powered subs through AUKUS, claiming the French deal for conventional models was the sensible option.
The choice made by Prime Minister Morrison was the opposite, re-entering into nuclear confrontation.
Nuclear confrontation with China, also claiming ditching the $90 billion French deal left Australia reliant on submarines it could neither build nor service. Criticism Anthony Albanese brushed off.
President Macron is entitled to put forward his views as he does in a very forthright way.
Pointing out it wasn't the only observation the French president made.
He noted that Australia has not decided to change their strategy on the subject.
Mr Albanese says he's spoken informally with Emmanuel Macron several times during the back-to-back summits.
We have a very good relationship and it will continue.
And a very good relationship with the US. After an official meeting with President Joe Biden in Cambodia at ASEAN last weekend, here in Bangkok today, an unofficial meeting with his Vice President, Kamala Harris. Discussing big changes in Indo-Pacific relationships, China re-engaging with the US, Australia and Japan, North Korea feeling left out, drawing attention to itself in customary fashion, firing an intercontinental missile while leaders met.
North Korea is a rogue state and they need to stop their aggression.
Some aggression outside the conference centre too. Protesters taking on police, a reminder for the leaders that peace in our times begins at home.
And Mark Riley joins us now from Bangkok. Mark, the informal meeting with Kamala Harris became quite a serious affair. What happened?
Yeah, it certainly did, Ange. A meeting of like-minded countries. It took on a sudden urgency with that latest volley of long-range missiles fired from North Korea. Kamala Harris calling together the leaders of Canada, South Korea, Japan, New Zealand and Australia, and unanimously voicing their condemnation of North Korea, particularly for that intercontinental missile which had a range long enough to reach the mainland of the USA. Now, the leaders call on North Korea to re-engage with regional partners and start to bring the temperature down. And you get the feeling that they may also now reach out to China again to move in as the honest broker to try and get some sort of a deal here, just in the way that the West is looking towards Beijing now to be the honest broker with Russia. A really interesting dynamic developing. Ange?
Certainly an interesting development. Mark Riley, thank you.
A man who unexpectedly pled guilty to murdering a gay man on the Northern Beaches 34 years ago has had his conviction set aside. Scott White confessed to throwing Scott Johnson off a cliff, but now says he didn't do it. The victim's family says it is a devastating development.
A 34-year fight for justice brought to nothing in moments this morning as the Court of Criminal Appeal quashed the murder conviction and sentence of Scott White.
Certainly, my family and I are quite devastated that we haven't found justice for my brother yet after 34 years.
White pleaded guilty in January during pre-trial argument, shocking everyone, including his lawyers. He then tried to retract the plea, saying he was stressed and confused, but the judge refused and in May sentenced him to 12.5 years jail. Today, 3 appeal court judges disagreed.
We respect this process, and I know even my brother Scott would appreciate the care that's being taken.
It was 1988 when Scott's body was found at the bottom of a cliff at North Head near Manly. His family long suspected foul play, that he was the victim of a gay hate crime.
Whatever lies ahead, we're more than ready for it.
A fresh trial is now likely, but the next steps aren't clear. Prosecutors this afternoon met with police and the family to discuss the options. This matter returns to court next month as the family's long quest for justice continues. Evan Batten, 7 News.
A teenager has died almost a week after being critically injured during a police chase on Sydney's North Shore. The 18-year-old was a passenger in the car when it slammed into a tree at Camaray last Sunday. Police say the driver and 3 other passengers are all in stable condition in hospital. The car was allegedly being driven by a 16-year-old girl without a licence.
3 men have been found guilty of murder and shooting down flight MH17 over eastern Ukraine 8 years ago. 2 of those convicted are Russian.
The families of 38 Australian victims say they finally have answers, but not total justice, with Vladimir Putin's war over Ukrainian territory raging.
Walking from a foreign court, the Australians, whose sense of relief is tempered by pain.
I also feel sad though. Yeah, because, for all of us it doesn't change anything, so it's a measure of justice, but it would be complete justice if our family members were restored to us.
In a specially convened Dutch court, the ruling.
Defendants Gherkin, Dubinsky and Kochenko are found guilty.
Of the 4 men accused of murdering 298 people on board flight MH17, 3 convicted. Sergei Dubinsky ordered for the Buk missile launcher to be moved from Russia to rebel-held Ukraine. A pro-Russian Ukrainian, Leonid Karchenko, helped escort the weapon. The commander of the Russian-backed rebel military, Igor Gherkin, who was calling the Kremlin almost daily, helped oversee the attempted cover-up. The judge said all 3 intended to kill. A Buk missile cannot be launched by mistake. 38 Australians died. Their families believe the judgment is proof who holds ultimate blame.
It remains a source of grief and it remains a source of anger for the families that Russia still to this time has not accepted any responsibility for what they've done.
The court couldn't find who pulled the trigger but deemed it didn't matter. The 3 guilty men sentenced to life in prison, terms they'll likely never serve. They're thought to be in hiding, protected by Russia.
And we must continue the pressure on Russia to hold Russia accountable for this heinous crime.
Oleg Pulatov was the only accused to have lawyers in court. He was acquitted. His role in the plot couldn't be proved. The search for justice, the search for answers doesn't end here. Investigators say they'll keep going to try and work out who else was involved, a job that may never end.
There are still persons of interest to the investigation, yes.
In Amsterdam, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
A spectacular sight on Sydney Harbour this morning. A flotilla of 50 jet skis formed the shape of a ribbon on the water to mark White Ribbon Day. The event included New South Wales Maritime, Surf Lifesaving and Port Authority staff. White Ribbon Day is an international social movement now engaging men and boys to end violence against women.
Amber is here now with the latest on Sydney's weather. And Amber, as we just saw, it was a beautiful day on the water today.
Good evening, Ange. Yes, including along the coast. This was the view from Cronulla this morning. A beautiful sunrise to start the day. Some scattered cloud cover early, but that quickly made way for clear blue skies. Tops of 20 degrees there in a moderate southeasterly breeze. We enjoyed dry and mostly sunny conditions right across the state today, although it was a cool end to the working week. Temperatures were well below the November average, as much as 8 degrees cooler in some parts. It dripped to just 2 degrees in Orange this morning. A ridge of high pressure will keep skies mostly clear over Sydney for the coming days, but there is a cold front on the way set to impact New South Wales from tomorrow. We'll have those details and more in your full forecast later, Michael and Ange.
OK, thank you, Amber. A major police breakthrough after a little boy was hit by a car while riding his bike. Next, we hear from his distraught family.
An odd discovery by police during raids in Sydney's southwest, a stolen cockatoo.
Back on home soil, the Australian economist freed after nearly 2 years in a Myanmar jail.
Later, Badgerys Creek Airport on track. An exclusive look inside the international terminal.
And an amazing rescue, how police officers saved this woman from a burning car. A father has spoken of his horror after his son was hit by a car and left for dead. The 12-year-old was riding his bike when he was struck down by a green Commodore being chased by police, the occupants fleeing the scene.
Waiting across the road to go to KFC to get lunch, and the car just come out of nowhere and just collected him.
The boy is battered, bruised and bandaged, but now able to sit up in hospital. 2 men have now been arrested in relation to the crash.
Police have made an unusual find during raids across southwestern Sydney. Strikeforce officers forced their way into homes at Lakemba, Bankstown and Punchbowl around 4:30 yesterday afternoon.
Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
Inside, they found 6 kilograms of methamphetamine, cannabis cash and a stolen cockatoo. 2 men were arrested and charged. War medals were also recovered during the search.
Australian economist Sean Turnell is safe at home tonight after being jailed in Myanmar for almost 2 years on trumped-up charges. He's bearded, looks haggard after being fed slops from a bucket, but Professor Turnell says he still loves the people of the country that held him captive.
If you want to know what time in a Myanmar prison can do, consider the case of Professor Sean Turnell. Flown home via Melbourne today, a breakthrough big enough for a prime ministerial announcement.
Occasionally in this job you have a big moment.
The 58-year-old reunited with his wife, Ha Vu.
After 650 days, and he was clearly counting them, he said to me, this is day 650.
Professor Turnell was in Myanmar working as an economics advisor for the government of Aung San Suu Kyi when a military coup in February last year saw her deposed and him locked up on trumped-up charges of breaching state secrets. Released yesterday, a day after his 11th wedding anniversary. His wife's words delivered by Foreign Minister Penny Wong.
I'm overwhelmed with joy at the news that my beloved husband Sean is coming home.
But it was clearly an ordeal.
He's not a large man, for those of you who've seen photos of him, and clearly has lost weight.
Professor Turnell now faces the challenges of post-prison adjustment or decompression as he moves back into life here in Australia. But he starts from a good place, with Prime Minister Albanese revealing he's in amazingly good spirits, even cracking jokes.
He's from my electorate and apologised for not voting at the election.
He told his captors on leaving he still loved them and their country.
He is a proud Australian, and today I think we should all be proud of him.
Chris Reason, 7 News.
Drivers have watched as a missile struck a road in Ukraine. Dashcam footage taken in the city of Dnipro captured the moment. Local officials say at least 14 people were killed, 23 others injured. Meantime, a top Ukrainian human rights investigator has found what's believed to be a torture chamber used by the Russians in the now liberated city of Kherson. At least 63 bodies with signs of torture have been uncovered.
Dramatic body cam has captured the moment US police officers raced to rescue a woman trapped underneath her car. She crashed and flipped the vehicle, which then burst into flames.
We got you, we got you, we got you, there you go, there you go, there you go, get her! We got it, we got it, we got it, pull, pull, pull!
Police lifted the car just enough and saved her from the burning wreck. The 51-year-old survived and was taken to hospital.
There's a new way to access discount flights as prices surge. Next, the golden era of cheap airfares. It's over, but there are still some ways you can save.
A league star avoids jail for a brutal assault on his girlfriend. Will he be allowed to play again?
And not long now, the pre-Christmas rush as we reveal the top toys flying off the shelves.
Soon in sports, Steve Smith's big breakthrough in his search for batting perfection.
Well, travel agents say they've never seen anything like it, with no such thing as cheap seats this summer and airlines struggling to meet demand. As families postpone their holiday plans, the sky-high prices we're paying to fly are likely to linger until mid-next year.
Sydney Airport still weeks from the summer holiday rush, today bustling with November getaways.
This trip we're doing now today was actually meant to be 2020.
We've flown a couple of times this year already because we have all this pent-up
feeling of getting away and getting out.
Free to fly, but at a price.
It is more expensive than it used to be.
I don't think we're going to go back to the golden age of cheap airfares for a long time.
Airline capacity slashed during the pandemic, still behind.
They've got to get the aircraft back up and they've got to get the staff back in. We've had fuel prices soaring too, so that's a perfect storm for excess demand and limited supply. When demand outstrips supply, prices go up.
Fasten your seatbelts. One-way fares from Sydney to Melbourne are as high as $1,000, as low as $69 in January. For Sydney to Brisbane, even more if you're flying between Christmas and New Year. Overseas, up to $3,500 to get to Bali for New Year. And if London's calling, you're paying $11,000 on Qantas, departing December 17.
If people really want to go, they will pay the price. We also believe that it will eventually balance out. It's not going to be possible to maintain these level of prices.
Believing they'll improve mid-next year as available seats and competition increase. And if you are flying over the Christmas holidays, Sydney Airport is already asking for your patience with the queues. Its boss says they are better prepared but are still short some 2,000 workers, expecting it to be busy but not chaotic. Paul Karak, 7 News.
Cruise ship passengers will now need to wear face masks as COVID cases continue to soar. Carnival Corporation, who owns brands including P&O Cruises, Princess Cruises and Carnival Cruise Line, has reintroduced the mandate. Masks are now required in public indoor spaces, outdoors when in large groups and while getting on and off the vessel. Former rugby league player Curtis Scott has escaped jail after choking his former girlfriend, slamming her against a wall and threatening to kill her. But that's not the end of it. Scott's not happy and says he'll appeal.
Dodging jail time, Curtis Scott leaves court guilty of domestic violence. He's free to return home, but is unhappy with his sentence.
Do you have hopes of playing rugby league again?
The former Melbourne Storm and Canberra Raiders player.
Gives it to Curtis Scott, who reaches out and scores for Canberra.
Slapped with a 12-month good behaviour bond and a $1,400 fine. He's guilty of assaulting his former girlfriend, athlete Talia Clark. Choking her in 2018, he threw her against a wall, knocked her down and threatened to kill her and then himself before driving into a tree. The court heard Talia was his first serious relationship and he was jealous and insecure.
It's been a tough start to the year for Curtis Scott, but he comes up with his second try of the season.
Adequately punished, according to his lawyers, after losing his NRL contract. His psychologist citing symptoms of PTSD. Scott didn't say whether he had hopes of playing professional football again, but it was clear he wasn't satisfied with today's outcome. Shortly after court wrapped up, he appealed his sentence and his conviction. Which means the whole ordeal is not over yet. Isabel Mullen, 7 News.
The $500 million redevelopment of the Australian War Memorial is really taking shape. Work's about to get underway on a link connecting the Heritage Building and the new Anzac Hall. It'll provide more than 7,000 square metres of additional exhibition space to tell the stories of recent conflicts and peacekeeping missions.
The countdown to Christmas is on and we're expected to spend up big. Major sales are already underway and tonight we have the list of the most in-demand toys.
5 weeks until Christmas and the wish lists are in.
Pokemon cards and Transformers. Dip and Lego.
A Lego table, yeah. The top toys, enduring favourites and one parents can save big on.
Packs that aren't necessarily themed, so kids can get really creative and build their own.
From Lego to the Barbie Dreamhouse playset.
She's got her own pool slide, it's got working lights, it's even got a flushing toilet.
Play-Doh and kiddie zoom cameras.
It's the novelty of being able to put your face up to it. Everything's rubber grip, so it's nice and durable.
Hot Wheels, Nerf guns, balance bikes and board games all on sale in Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales.
You're seeing big bargains on Lego, 50% off for those at Myer. Also seeing big Play-Doh bargains at Big W, bunch of Jurassic World themed stuff happening, and perennial favourites like Barbie also seeing 30% off those.
During the Christmas trade period, the National Retail Association is predicting Australians will spend 4% 30% more compared to last year. $12 billion in Queensland, $16 billion in Victoria and $19 billion in New South Wales.
Australian retail sales are set to crack $60 billion for the first time this festive period.
Retail experts predict cost of living pressures won't curb Christmas spending, but families will look to sales to save. Comparison website Finder recommending people shop with a plan.
Set yourself a budget. Say, right, this is how much I'm spending, and once you've spent that, stop. Otherwise, you can find yourself overwhelmed.
And over budget, trying to please the kids. Rosanna Kingson, 7 News.
7 News has been honoured with 2 major wins for excellence in journalism at the prestigious Walkley Awards. The team, who spent more than 4 months on the front line during the war in Ukraine, won coverage of a major event or issue. Hugh Whitfeld, Sarah Greenhalgh, Jeff Parry, Chief Correspondent Chris Reason, and cameraman Paul Walker, Simon Heidsick and James Cannon were all honoured. Chris also took out an individual award for Best Television News Reporting.
Largely empty at the time. Most residents had already decided in the last couple of weeks to pack the bags, leave this city and head to the safety of the West.
The judges highlighting the impact of that particular piece from the war zone. A very big congratulations to all the frontline team and those back home here in the newsroom who helped produce that excellent coverage. Well done.
Sydney's second airport is slowly taking shape. Next, we get an exclusive look inside the Badgerys Creek terminal.
Also, the Hollywood superheroes' concerning find and the family connection.
In sport, thanks to The Rock, the Kangaroos can smell what Samoa are cooking at the World Cup.
And it's looking like a sunny weekend ahead for Sydney. All the details in your full forecast soon.
Time now for a check on the markets with finance editor Gemma Acton.
Thanks, Ange. Aussie stocks have meandered into the weekend, the ASX 200 rising by just 16 points to close at 7,152. Travel and property companies finished in the red, while telecoms are today's best performers. The Aussie dollar has ticked back above 67 US cents and is continuing to push higher, while another large COVID outbreak in China has hit forecasts for global oil demand. And new data shows the increasing strain on our healthcare system, with a jump in patients waiting more than a day to see a GP for urgent medical care. More than a third of city dwellers are waiting that long, and half of those in regional or remote areas. Ange.
Thank you, Gemma.
Hollywood actor Chris Hemsworth has discovered some worrying news about his health on a new show. The 39-year-old learned he's 8 to 10 times more likely than the average person to develop Alzheimer's disease.
The idea that I won't be able to remember the life I've experienced, or my wife, my kids, this is probably my biggest fear.
Hemsworth also revealed his grandfather suffers from the disease and struggles to remember his family.
It's the long-promised jewel known to most as the Badgerys Creek Airport, and tonight we can show you how it's really taking shape.
7 News has granted an exclusive look behind the scenes as Western Sydney International pays homage to our aviation history.
It's Western Sydney's gateway to the world, and construction is taking off. 3.7 kilometres of runway laid after one of the largest ever earthworks projects in Australian history.
This is the most transformational piece of infrastructure since we built the Harbour Bridge.
7 News given exclusive access to an airport designed to welcome more than 10 million passengers a year.
Western Sydney Airport is a massive infrastructure build. It will, within 15 years, be Sydney's principal airport.
More than 3,000 workers are on site for the build, half of them from Western Sydney. The roof for the new terminal, the next stage to get underway.
It's going to bring opportunity to the West, and it's going to give kids a future that maybe they dream about, and it's going to deliver it.
This terminal is now 50% complete, and the airport's on track to be up and running by 2026. It's hoped by then it will create tens of thousands of jobs, meaning more money poured back into Western Sydney. And tonight, greater education. A landmark agreement penned between the airport and the new Powerhouse Museum in Parramatta, creating educational programs and showcasing the culture of Western Sydney to the world.
This is about us working together, exploiting every opportunity we can to work work together in the areas of knowledge. This is a partnership that has very long-term implications.
Liam Tapper, 7 News.
As summer fast approaches, many of us will be heading to the beach, and a new device is helping keep us safe. Next, the ePerb that can call for help with the touch of a button, and how it saved 2 men in wild surf. Don't miss that story soon here on 7 News.
First, Matt's here with Sport, and Matt, Big Mal's almost ready to pull on the green and gold again.
Yeah, Michael Ange, the big Meninga don't argue, came out a few times today. He's pumped up for the World Cup final, and there's plenty happening. Coming up, the Rock's big pep talk for Samoa, and the Kangaroos fire up about passion, why they don't need war cries to prove it. And Steve Smith's 3 words of warning for bowlers around the world as the Aussies down England. I'm back, baby. So says Steve Smith. A big change in batting technique produced what he called his best innings for 6 years. Chasing England's 287, Smith helped Australia do so with 6 wickets to spare, rating his unbeaten 80 the closest he's ever come to perfection.
Steve Smith back home, eager for more tomorrow night in Game 2 against England. But it was in Adelaide where the gun batter felt a weight leave his shoulders.
Actually probably the best I've felt at the crease in about 6 years.
That best triggered by 1 stroke.
Glides onto the bat and out to the fence.
And 3 words.
I'm back, baby.
Are you back, baby? I hope so. For me, yesterday was probably as close to perfection as I'll get.
Smith has long been branded our best since Don Bradman. No one comes close to Bradman's average of almost 100, but the pair did boast a similar batting technique. Since February, however, Smith's technique has undergone major change.
Nice and side on the right, very open on the left. So it's a big change.
I think when I'm playing like cover drives like those one and getting my weight back through the ball, that's when I know I'm hitting them well.
Smith 6 sealing a 6-wicket win, his unbeaten 80 better than any century.
It felt as though things clicked.
New opening pair Travis Head and Dave Warner also fired. Smith cool on any future one-day captaincy recall.
I doubt it. I mean, I'm 33, so I'd say I'd be going for someone younger personally, but you know, look, I'm pretty chilled in my role.
Andrew McKinlay, 7 News.
Mal Meninga's fired up at the World Cup, daring officials to get serious about international league and bristling at talk Sunday's final means more to Samoa than his Kangaroos. But even Big Mal can't match the biggest star on the planet.
All smiles and pleasantries for a final worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster.
And I got goosebumps right now. I don't know if you guys could see that. But I was there with you guys on Saturday. I put on a Toa Samoa jersey and I would play. I'd take that field.
A 5-minute video to tell the world the Samoans have arrived.
My grandfather always taught me that, yes, Samoa is proud of who you are, where you come from, what's in your blood, what's in your DNA, what's deep in here.
Junior Paulo didn't need to hear it from The Rock. His dad's taught tough Samoan love all his life.
That's the reason why I've been able to live the life I have now, and I can't thank him enough for that.
The Kangaroos are tired of hearing about Pacific pride.
We're just as passionate and we're just as committed and we're just as proud to put our country's colours on. I mean, we're playing for Australia.
They won't bring back the 67 Roos war cry to prove it.
We know internally how proud we are. Obviously we don't have, you know, any dancers or huckers to sort of show that.
Here on tour, Mal and Teddy have both called for more test matches. They say if the powers that be are serious about growing the international game, it's time to act.
We've got to be playing in National Rugby League against each other, test match rugby league on an annual basis.
For now, time to lay the smackdown.
My Usos, I love you. I'm so proud of you. We are all so proud of you.
Travelling with the Australian Kangaroos in the UK, Michelle Bishop, 7 News.
And just moments ago, West Tigers' new $75 million Centre of Excellence opened for business. While the precinct caters for the public and local sports clubs, the centre features a state-of-the-art gym, pools, medical and rehab facilities, all bound to be busy in the Tigers' bid next season to avoid back-to-back wooden spoons. The Socceroos' injury worries are easing. Defender and goal-scoring weapon Harry Souttar's back training in Qatar. Only 3 games in 3 months due to a broken foot is no concern for Kai Rolls, dealing with the French superstars next Wednesday.
When you've got the likes of Benzema and Mbappe around you, you don't have time to kind of think about how you're feeling and stuff like that. You just got to do your job.
And here he is with Argentina, Lionel Messi, touching down ahead of his 5th World Cup with the hot favourites. A pro-Celtic crowd and Ange Postecoglou's Aussie homecoming spoiled by Sydney FC at Allianz Stadium last night. Struggling in the A-League so far, the Sky Blues stunned the Scottish champions 2-1. Ange had just been inducted into the Football Australia Hall of Fame.
From my perspective, hopefully the best is yet to come.
If you believe the football rumour mill, that could be at Everton, Celtic's next opponents on Sunday. And the A-League has launched an audacious bid to bring global superstar Cristiano Ronaldo to Australia. Facing the sack at Man United, the Portuguese legend does have an Aussie connection with grandparents living in Western Australia. I don't quite believe that one, guys. My favourite thing today, the war cry by the Kangaroos. Try that on the dance floor tonight.
Hasn't that been lost to the archives?
Yeah, I think it's a good one to keep away.
Yeah. All right,
Cheers, guys.
Thank you. You might know about EPIRBs for boaties and hikers. Now there are emergency response beacons, or ERBs, for beachgoers.
The instant communication devices are being installed at drowning hotspots along the coast, and they're already saving lives.
Someone help! A desperate plea. Someone's drowning. Please help. A frantic woman calls for help, fearing her day at the beach had turned deadly.
How many people are in the water?
2 of them. One, her partner.
Lifeguards and emergency services are on the way.
She runs down to the shore to wait as 2 strangers attempt to rescue before lifeguards arrive.
And they quickly whizzed around the corner and were able to come in and save these 2 gentlemen's lives.
A swift response thanks to this.
These emergency response beacons are incredible technology that genuinely save lives.
Activated by the push of a button at the beach, an ERB provides an instant communication link to the Surf Life Saving Operations Centre here in Belrose.
We can glean information from both the audio and the video that sometimes the informant's not able to give us.
20 have been rolled out to black spots across the state, ready for summer, with the government announcing $16 million in funding to buy 12 more.
Any way that we can support them and the role that they play is a worthwhile investment.
This is the first time it's been seen in action.
Someone's coming now. I'm calling the ambulance right now.
Lifeguards embracing the technology but warning against complacency.
The safest place to swim is a patrolled location, anywhere where those red and yellow flags are flying.
Amelia Brace, 7 News.
Well, Amber's back now with Sydney's weather. Amber, hello again. Set to remain dry across the city, but the regions, more rain.
Good evening, Michael. Yeah, more showers are expected across southern parts and the Riverina late tomorrow. Those details are next.
Tonight's 7 News headlines. Sydney commuters will be able to travel on trains for free for a week starting Monday in the hope of de-escalating the ongoing stoush between the state government and the union.
And the Premier has been confronted by angry residents during his visit to flood-affected towns in the state's central west. Now, here's Amber with Sydney's weather.
Thanks, Angela. The sunshine rolls on for Sydney with a warm weekend ahead. It reached a top of 22 degrees in the city earlier this afternoon. That followed a cool overnight low of 12, which is a few below average for this time of year. On the satellite, this high-pressure ridge currently moving over the country's southeast is responsible for the settled conditions we're enjoying in New South Wales. But a trough and cold front will push into the state's west tomorrow, reaching the coast by Sunday. Winds are expected to strengthen ahead of that front as it tracks east, with showers also likely tomorrow across much of the country's southeast corner. Up to 15 mils expected in Melbourne, 20 mils expected in Adelaide, while in the west, partly cloudy skies are forecast for WA, with a mostly sunny Saturday on the way for Brisbane. Statewide now, you can see those showers pushing into western New South Wales tomorrow. They should ease as they track east, with only light falls expected across parts of the central west and the Riverina. They peter off completely by the time they reach the coast. A number of flood warnings do remain in place though, particularly for communities on the Lachlan and Murray rivers, where we are seeing those near record peaks. Closer to home, plenty of sunshine tomorrow. Temperatures hovering in the mid to late 20s for most parts. 21 the top along the coast west for Bondi. On the water, northerly winds should reach up to 15 knots during the morning before tendering northeasterly and increasing to up to 30 knots offshore during the evening. A strong wind warning is in place tomorrow. That's for the Byron coast and also for the waters of Sydney all the way down to Eden. But in the city tomorrow, on the way to 25 degrees, dipping to 13 overnight. Plenty of sunshine expected tomorrow. 29 degrees tomorrow in the west. On Sunday, we'll see westerly winds. They could reach up to 50 kilometres per hour during the morning and on Monday along the coast. The good news though, mostly sunny skies are forecast right across the next 7 days, remaining warm as well. 31 degrees expected late next week in the west. So, Michael and Ange, not looking too bad for the week ahead.
I think that's looking pretty good, in fact, Amber. All right, thank you for that. That is 7 News for this Friday. We'll have updates for you throughout the evening.
Weekend Sunrise starts at 7 tomorrow from all of the 7 News team. I hope you have a great night.
Good night.